If today feels more stable, like you're ready to move again, but in a more controlled way, this isn't random. Something has settled. The intensity from before has passed. The confusion has cleared. The clarity has integrated. And now you're standing in a different place. Not at the beginning, but not fully in motion either. Right at the point where movement becomes available again. You may notice a shift in how you feel. Less reactive, less pressured, less pulled in different directions, and instead, more focused, more aware of what matters, more selective with your energy, more intentional in how you want to move forward. Things that felt unclear before no longer carry the same weight, not because they disappeared, but because your relationship to them has changed. You're no longer trying to figure everything out. You're starting to move based on what is already clear, and that feels different, calmer, more grounded, more controlled. You may also notice that your actions feel more deliberate, less rushed, less impulsive, less driven by urgency, and more guided by awareness. Because something has shifted internally. You've processed, you've reflected, you've integrated. And now, you're no longer reacting to what happened, you're responding to what remains. This is the transition happening today, from internal processing back into external movement, but not in the same way as before, because now you're not moving from pressure, you're moving from clarity, and that changes everything. So if today feels like a quiet readiness, like you're prepared to take the next step without rushing into it, it's because you've reached a point where movement is no longer reactive, it's intentional. What you're experiencing today is not just readiness. It's recalibrated direction. The past few days have shifted something internally. Clarity came through. Distortion passed. Understanding began to settle. And now, your energy is reorganized. Not in a dramatic way, but in a precise one. You may notice that your impulses feel different. Less scattered, less urgent, less driven by emotion, and more focused, more selective, more connected to what actually matters. That's the shift. Because before, movement was reactive, driven by pressure, influenced by uncertainty, shaped by what felt intense in the moment. But now, that layer has cleared. And what remains is direction. Not perfect clarity, but enough clarity to know where your energy is best placed. You're no longer trying to act on everything. You're choosing what is worth acting on. And that choice is what makes today different. You may also notice that your decision-making feels cleaner. Less overthinking, less second-guessing. Not because you're rushing, but because you're more aligned. The unnecessary noise has reduced, and what remains stands out more clearly. This is the result of integration. When your system processes what has happened, it removes what is not essential. It filters out what no longer fits, and it leaves you with something simpler, more direct, more usable. So what you're feeling today is not a push to move fast. It's an invitation to move correctly. Because movement has returned, but now it's supported by awareness. And awareness creates control. You're not reacting to external pressure anymore. You're responding to internal alignment. And that changes the way you move. It becomes more deliberate, more efficient, more grounded in reality.
So the energy today is not about doing more. It's about doing what actually matters, with clarity, with intention, and with a level of control that wasn't fully available before.
This is where today can shift off track. Because even though clarity has returned, habit still exists. You may notice moments where old patterns try to reappear. The urge to move quickly, to act without checking, to respond out of momentum instead of intention. Because your system is used to that, used to reacting under pressure, used to making decisions quickly when energy is high. And even though things feel more stable now, that old rhythm can still show up. That's the first trap. Mistaking familiarity for alignment. Just because something feels natural doesn't mean it's correct. It may simply be what you're used to. You might find yourself about to act before fully checking in, responding out of habit, following momentum instead of direction. And it can happen subtly, without much awareness, because it feels normal. But normal is not always aligned. The second trap is losing precision. Because things feel clearer now, you may assume everything is clear. And that can lead to overconfidence, moving too broadly, taking on too much, acting on things that aren't fully grounded yet. Because the difference today is not that everything is clear. It's that what is clear stands out more. And if you don't stay selective, you can lose that advantage. There's also a quieter pattern today, subtle impatience, a sense that now it's time to move forward fully, to make progress quickly, to catch up on what was paused. But that urgency can pull you out of alignment again. Because this phase is not about speed, it's about precision. And precision requires restraint. Not stopping movement, but controlling it. Choosing carefully where your energy goes. So the real calibration today is awareness in action. Not just thinking clearly, but moving clearly. Not just knowing what matters, but staying with it. Even when other options appear. Even when distractions come in. Even when old habits try to take over. Because what makes today powerful is not the return of movement. It's the way you handle it. Whether you fall back into reaction or stay in alignment. And that choice happens moment by moment. So how do you move forward today without slipping back into reaction? You simplify your direction. Not by doing less for the sake of it, but by focusing only on what is clearly aligned. Because today is not about exploring every option. It's about committing to what already makes sense. Start by identifying what feels steady. Not what feels exciting, not what feels urgent, but what remains clear even when you pause. That's your starting point. And once you have that, stay with it. Don't divide your attention. Don't dilute your energy. Because clarity loses strength when it's spread too thin. You can also create structure around your movement. Not rigid control, but simple boundaries. Decide where your energy is going today. And just as importantly, where it is not. Because what you choose not to engage with is what protects your alignment. You can also slow your transitions, not your actions, but the shift between them. Before moving from one thing to another, pause briefly. Check your state. Are you still aligned, or are you being pulled by momentum? That small pause keeps your movement intentional. You may also notice that this kind of movement feels different, less intense, less dramatic, but more effective. Because it doesn't waste energy, it builds, step by step, without needing constant correction. And that's the key today. Not big actions, but clean actions. Not fast movement, but directed movement. Because when your actions are aligned, they don't need to be repeated later. They don't need to be fixed. They hold. So today, let clarity guide your direction, but let discipline guide your movement. Because that combination is what turns awareness into real progress.
Let everything settle here. Not to stop your movement, but to anchor it. Because today was not about starting something new. It was about moving forward with what has already become clear. So take a breath. Steady, controlled, unforced. And notice what remains when you're not trying to do more. There's a different kind of clarity here. Not urgent, not reactive, but steady. And that steadiness is what makes your movement sustainable. Because you're no longer acting from pressure, you're acting from understanding. And that changes how things unfold. Not everything needs your attention now. Not everything needs to be acted on today. Some things can wait. And when you allow that, your energy stays focused, your direction stays clear, and your actions begin to build instead of scatter. So you don't need to push forward faster. You don't need to take on more. You just need to stay connected to what already makes sense, because that's what moves you forward. Not intensity, not urgency, but consistency. And consistency is what turns clarity into real progress. So as you move through the rest of your day, keep returning to that. What is clear? What is steady? What remains the same even when you pause? Let that guide you, not everything else. Because what is aligned will not need to compete for your attention. It will stay, quietly, consistently, ready to be acted on when you choose. And if this helped you feel more focused, even slightly, carry that with you. Return to it when things begin to feel scattered again. And if you want to keep moving through these shifts with more clarity, more control, you can come back here. Each day, not to find direction, but to stay aligned with how you move forward.